The absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to add a few words this afternoon about the ongoing negotiations on the federal budget and on our rapidly approaching debt ceiling. I think we all agree that the situation we face is one of enormous importance and complexity. I believe that every responsible person also agrees that a failure to act would have awful repercussions that would jeopardize, or worse, our fragile and tentative economic recovery. So I think the responsible view is that it is imperative that we act. And it is also clear that to do so will require every side to make concessions. I rise this afternoon, however, because it's my strong belief that any agreement that we reach must be based on real savings and must not be made at the expense of our most vulnerable citizens. That is why I'm so concerned about reports that Social Security and Medicare have been raised as possible sources of deficit reduction. Cuts to Social Security and to Medicare benefits should not be on the table. Social Security is not the cause of the deficit, never has been the cause of a deficit, and beneficiaries of Social Security should not be made to shoulder the burden of deficit reduction. Social Security is funded through the contributions of our nation's workers and businesses. It has an enormous surplus, and it is projected to be fully solvent for another quarter century. So while I would agree with steps to strengthen Social Security, any changes should be considered independent of our effort to reduce the deficit, and we should not cut Social Security benefits. I helped co-found the Senate Defending Social Security Caucus for this very reason. The solvency of the Social Security program can be extended significantly just by applying payroll taxes to a greater portion of the earnings of millionaires and billionaires. What we've seen in this country is a huge shift of income going more and more to the uppermost economic reaches and less to the middle class. The middle class has actually lost income in the last decade. So the contributions to Social Security are lower because there's less income to draw it off of, and the income that is above the $106,000 Social Security cap, that's where the explosion of income has been. And they contribute not a nickel from that income to Social Security. So there's a lot that we can do to support Social Security. What we should not do is give in to any of the calls to put our seniors' security at risk in the stock market by privatizing Social Security or increasing the retirement age so that a construction worker or a waitress who works on their feet all day long has to put in more years of service at that age when their body might frankly not be up to it any longer. Or to cut benefits through backdoor methods such as lowering the cost of living adjustment. I tell you, Mr. President, the Rhode Island seniors that I've heard from at my community dinners and at the senior senators all around the state that I visited are very concerned with what would happen if their benefits are cut. Audrey from Middletown told me that after her husband died, she had many expenses, but as she said, no income except for his Social Security check, which enabled me to go on living simply but adequately without being a burden on my sons and losing my dignity as well. Two very important points Audrey makes. One is that Social Security is not just a benefit to Social Security recipients. It's a benefit to the children of Social Security recipients on whom their parents might otherwise be a burden. And it's an American value that senior citizens who've worked hard all their lives, who've played by the rules, who've built the America that we now enjoy, should be able to not lose their dignity at the end of their life. That is a principle that is worth defending. Ronald from Cumberland, Rhode Island, has been on Social Security for a number of years. He wrote me to say, it seems that it's always the people who need the help the most who get cut from the federal government. Why is this? No Social Security cost of living adjustment for 2 years Yet prices for the basic needs still rise. In a country like the United States of America, this should not happen. These people, Mr. President, who are living on Social Security income are not living high off the hog, and they should not be the targets of our cost-cutting zeal. The threat to the Medicare program is just as real. Earlier this year, Republicans over in the House of Representatives passed a budget that would end the Medicare program as we have come to know it for future generations. I can remember being at a senior center in North Providence, and a gentleman sitting at a table said to me, "You know, I've helped build this country. I have fought in its wars, and I understand that the Republican proposal will protect Medicare for me. But I'm not willing to let Medicare for my children be thrown under the bus. That would make me feel awful. It simply isn't right for me to stay on it and stand for the program to be taken apart and dismembered for everybody else." That was a moving statement for me to hear, and we need to honor that. Estimates suggest that the House Republicans' proposal would end up forcing a typical 65-year-old senior to pay, on average, $12,500 each year in out-of-pocket expenses starting in 2022. That's more than double what a senior is estimated to pay then if the current system, if Medicare stayed in place. In Rhode Island, the average senior only gets about $14,200 per year from Social Security to begin with. So if you're going to ask people who now have $14,200 a year who aren't getting cost of living adjustments by 2022 to pay $12,500 for Medicare, that would be a massive exercise in poverty creation. And what Medicare and Social Security have done is lifted the burden of poverty from American seniors. I think sometimes we're blind to what life might be like without them when some of our colleagues so cavalierly suggest that we should do away with these programs, privatize them, or turn them over to the insurance industry. The Republican budget would also reopen the Medicare prescription drug donut hole. We just went to a lot of effort to close that donut hole in the Affordable Care Act. That donut hole will be gone in 10 years, thanks to the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans all voted against the Affordable Care Act. They all voted against closing the donut hole, and now in their budget on the other side, they want to unwind that part of the bill and take away the protections that we have provided for seniors in the donut hole. That would cost millions of dollars to seniors in Rhode Island starting next year if it were put into law. That's not something off in the future. That is right now thousands of Rhode Island seniors having to cough up millions of dollars because of this Republican House budget plan. That's something that I think we need to defend against. That's just the wrong place to look. And it's especially the wrong place to look as we find our Republican colleagues fighting so hard to protect tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. I've given the speech repeatedly already, so I won't dwell on it now. But when our Republican colleagues stand up and say, we're against tax hikes, it's really important for Americans to look behind the curtain and see who they're really defending. Because I will tell you, everybody in this chamber, Republican and Democrat alike, believes that ordinary American families earning ordinary levels of income should be exempt from any tax hikes. That is not even on the table. When our Republican colleagues talk about defending against tax hikes, they're talking about defending the oil industry from having subsidies that they don't need and that taxpayers pay for taken away. They're talking about protecting the top 400 income earners in the country who on average pay federal taxes, actually paid in. This isn't a theory, this isn't a rate, this is what they actually paid in, according to the IRS, 18.2%. These are people who made, on average, more than $250 million with a B, billion dollars with a B, in 1 year. And God bless them, what a wonderful thing it is to make more than $250 million in 1 year. But they pay taxes at a lower rate than a truck driver in Rhode Island does on average. The guy who wakes up every morning and gets into his clothes and puts on his boots and gets in the truck and goes out there and works all day pays the same tax rate as the person earning over $250 million. And they can talk about tax hikes till they're blue in the face. It won't take away the fact that that is the way it actually works in this country. And they are defending that and going after Audrey and the folks on Medicare in Rhode Island, on Ronald from Cumberland. That's just not right. And we need to argue about that and fight back. We can never overlook what Medicare and Social Security have contributed to our nation's prosperity. It is not just the benefit for the Medicare beneficiary. It is not just the benefit for the Social Security recipient. It is the freedom we all feel, knowing that we will have a dignified old age, that we won't be at the mercy of Wall Street, that we won't be at the mercy of a private insurance company, that we will have the efficient and effective services that Medicare and Social Security deliver. We can know that now and enjoy that. We have more freedom as Americans now because we can make bolder choices in our lives, knowing that we don't have to defend ourselves against that kind of poverty and that kind of misery in our old age. Our children can make bolder choices in their lives, knowing that they don't have to safeguard against a parent's illness ruining their own financial futures, ruining their families' financial futures. And imagine how awful it must feel for a parent in that circumstance. If in your old age you become grievously ill and the only resort you have is to essentially wipe out your children who feel a moral obligation to take care of your medical expenses and put themselves into poverty and misery as a result of your illness. What an awful, awful human tragedy that is for the people involved. And we don't experience that tragedy in America. We don't experience it because Medicare and Social Security are there. The challenge before us, Mr. President, is a formidable one. But I truly believe that we can reach an agreement on the deficit and the debt ceiling without compromising the security and the well-being of our seniors. I believe that the Democratic Budget Committee's proposed budget is a good model for how we can actually do it, and I look forward to continuing this discussion. It is not necessary in order to solve our immediate deficit problems and to get through this debt limit fight to take our seniors and put Social Security and Medicare that they have relied on at risk, to take this country whose prosperity Social Security and Medicare do so much to support and knock that down with a tax on Social Security and Medicare. It is not right, it is not necessary, and we should stand against it. Mr. President, I thank you and yield the floor. I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Does consent to call the quorum be terminated?
Without objection.
Mr. President, first of all, I express my appreciation to you presiding all these hours you have this afternoon. But I also want to take just a minute and thank these pages here. It's the first time since 1974 that the Senate has been in session during the July 4th recess period. Since 1974. These young pages had places to be with their families during the summer vacation period. They're juniors in high school. They have some plans, I'm sure, that we interfered with. But the work here that we've done this week, while there hasn't been a lot of time here on the floor, a lot of things going on all over Washington. There have been meetings at the White House. There's been meetings with the Vice President, with the President, with the Speaker, and others, working on this very important issue. And so when these 8 pages in later years reflect back on the fact that they were here during one of the first, was the first time since 1974 that we were in session, they should reflect that we're here for important reasons. And if we do what is right, we'll be able to rein in this debt the country has and protect the most needy of our country. So I apologize for keeping them here. They shouldn't have had to be here this week, but they've stayed here because they have an obligation as pages to be here, and they accepted that. They've kept this Senate running smoothly. We need them. They're helpful to us. And they didn't have to be asked. Each one of these 8 pages volunteered. Naomi Biden, Brian Danino, Claire Karsting, William Moss, Eliza Reisner, Morgan Whistle, Kyra Harris, and Chafee Duckers. So I appreciate very much their service and wish them the best in their educational endeavors in the years to come. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to period of morning business. Senators allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Objection.
I ask consent the Senate proceed to consideration of S-Res 229.
Clerk will report.
Senate Resolution 229, recognizing the heroic efforts of firefighters to contain numerous wildfires that have affected thousands of people throughout the United States.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I shall ask consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action on this matter or any further debate. And any statements relating to this matter be placed in the record at the appropriate place as if given.
Without objection.
I'm told there's a bill at the desk due for a second reading, first reading.
Clerk will report. No, the clerk will read the title of the bill for the first time.
S. 1340, a bill to cut, cap, and balance the federal budget.
I now ask for second reading in order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, but I also object to my own request.
Objection having been heard. The bill will receive its second reading on the next legislative day.
I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business day adjourned until 2 p.m. on Monday, July 11th, following the prayer and the pledge journal proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired. Time for the 2 leaders will be reserved for the use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, the Senate resume the motion to proceed to calendar number 93 S 1323, a bill to express the sense of the Senate on shared sacrifice in resolving the budget deficit post-closure under the previous order.
Without objection.
Then, Mr. President, there will be a roll call vote on Monday on the 11th at 5:30 on the motion to proceed to that S 1323. There's no further business to come before the Senate. I ask we adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until Monday, 2 p.m. on July 11th.
The Senate today has been considering a non-binding measure saying those earning more than $1 million a year should contribute more to federal debt reduction.